El subjuntivo. So the day has come for you to learn the subjunctive. Please don't be scared. It's really not as hard as it sounds. And in fact, it's going to be, I think, a clearer-cut decision for you than the imperfect and the preterite has been. So first, what is the subjunctive? It's not a tense, it's a mood. And in Spanish there are three moods. The indicative, which you've learned up till this point. The imperative, those are the commands. And then the subjunctive. So here's the difference between a tense and a mood. A tense shows when an action takes place. So I did it, I do it, I will do it, present, past, present, and future. A mood shows how the speaker feels about that action. If you're wondering if it exists in English, it does, but we really don't use it as frequently as it is used in Spanish. In fact, it's kind of dying out in English. But here are a few phrases that contain the subjunctive. If I were a rich man, the line from the song from the musical Fiddler on the Roof. I wouldn't do that if I were you. And they only ask that he not say anything before the announcement. You can tell, especially with the last example, that say is something different from what you're used to because we don't say he say, we say he says. That's indicative in English, and he say is subjunctive. You can also tell that it's dying out in English, that it's starting to not be used as much because you'll hear people struggle with a decision of what verb to use. I wouldn't do that if I was you. I wouldn't do that if I were you. They're not quite sure which to use. And in fact, people try to get around using the subjunctive by just using an infinitive construction. So instead of saying they only ask that he not say anything, they only ask him not to say anything. That's probably the more common way to say it. So when is it used? The subjunctive is used to show what someone wants someone else to do. You can think of the subjunctive as trying to subject someone to your will. You are indirectly bossing them around. And because of that, there's going to be a change in subject from one clause to the next. So Minerva wants the Dominican people to know the truth. Literally, in Spanish, you would say, Minerva wants that the people Dominican know the truth. So Minerva is trying to influence the actions of the Dominican people. There's a change in subject. And sepa is the verb in the subjunctive. Minerva orders Mate to go home. Minerva manda que Mate vaya, that's the verb in the subjunctive, a casa. So Minerva is trying to influence Mate's actions. Like I said earlier, you're basically indirectly bossing someone around. So instead of it just being Minerva says, Mate, go home, right? It's a little more indirect. I want you to go home. I want that you to go home. Or Minerva wants that Mate go home. So this is one of the reasons, subjecting to someone to your will is one of the reasons for using the subjunctive. There will be more to come, but that's our first focus. So where in the sentence does it go? It's used primarily after the word que, and you can think of it as the subjunctive's habitat, the place where it lives, is the dependent clause, the part of the sentence after que. So if you're thinking of bossing somebody else around, trying to influence their actions, here's you, here's some sort of verb that shows influence, this verb will be in the indicative, in the present tense, what you've known since Spanish 1. Then you'll have que, and then you'll have a different subject from the first subject, and the verb will be in the subjunctive that follows that different subject. So, I want that you guys copy these notes. I want you to copy the notes. So I am trying to influence your behavior. Let's look at the two examples here. Minerva's father hopes that she gets married. Minerva's father is hoping, so he's trying to influence her behavior, her actions. And then that she gets married, here's our subjunctive. It's after the que, it's after the that, and it's the action that's trying to be influenced. So let me show you what that looks like in Español. El padre de Minerva espera. So that's just in the present tense of the indicative. Que ella se case. Don't worry right now about the formation of the subjunctive. We'll get to it later, but you can see it's very similar to the two negative usted and ustedes commands. It's opposite endings. So the go to yo, drop the o, add opposite endings, you know. The second example, Trujillo asked that Minerva dance with him. Trujillo is trying to influence Minerva's actions. Trujillo pide, there's our que, Minerva baile con él. And I know that looks like the noun, dance, un baile, but it is also the subjunctive, the present subjunctive conjugation of bailar. Here's some more práctica. Minerva's father doesn't want his daughters to go to boarding school. So, do we have a change in subject? Minerva's father's wanting, somebody else to do something. So, el padre de Minerva no quiere. And you'll notice all the verbs that are in the independent clause, the ones that are showing influence, trying to influence others' behaviors, are the verbs from the vocab of this chapter, section 2. So we have our que, and what follows is going to be in the subjunctive, the verb. Que sus hijas vayan a la escuela. Minerva wants to go to boarding school. Here, Minerva is not trying to influence anybody else's actions. There's no change in subject. So we wouldn't have the subjunctive. Minerva quiere ir a la escuela. And without translating all these sentences, I want you to just decide if you would need the subjunctive or not. Her mother wants her husband to say yes. So her mother wants her husband to do something, so yes, you would use the subjunctive. You would say her mother wants that her husband say, and say would be in the subjunctive, yes. Minerva finds out that she gets to go. So, finding out, is that a verb of influence? It's not. So we wouldn't need the subjunctive in the second part of the sentence. Please be careful. Don't get K happy. Don't think that because a sentence has K in it, the subjunctive is going to have to follow. You'll have to look at the verb before the K to know what to do to the verb after the K. Minerva's father demands that she watch her mouth. Well, demands is a verb of influence. So he's trying to influence another person's behavior. You would use the subjunctive here for watch her mouth. Mate insists that Minerva treat her like an adult. Insisting is a verb of influence. She's trying to influence somebody else's behavior, so treat her like an adult. Treat would be in the subjunctive. Minerva sees that Mate's not going to back down. So let's look at the verb before the K to know what to do with the verb after the K. Seeing, that's not a verb of influence, so I would not need to use the subjunctive here. Mate takes a bus to the capital. Nope, no subjunctive. First of all, there's no change in subject. There's no K. It's just takes a bus. That's indicative. The indicative is used to report. Minerva forbids that Mate stay with her. So let's look before the K to know what to do with the verb after the K. Forbidding, that's a verb of influence. And so that Mate stay with her, the stay would be in the subjunctive.